What's up, guys? How's it going? And welcome to another episode. Today we're gonna be reviewing God of War Ragnarok. I know I'm a little bit late for this video. This video actually was supposed to be released over the weekend when I actually finished the game, but I've been sick and a lot of things been going on. So today, finally, get to talk about the game. So I do apologize for kind of the delay, I guess, if you will. And I have a lot of things to say about this game. I will be comparing a lot to the previous game. So if you haven't played the previous game, some things that I say or not say may make sense in the review or not. And I really won't compare this to other games or action games or anything like that. I will be kind of focusing on the game itself, what it does here and everything. For what it's worth, I do believe that this game is worth being played, and I do think it's a good addition as far as like from the God of War franchise and everything. A lot of people are calling the game of the year. You may feel free to feel that way. I do think it's a great game, and it's nice that it's being nominated as a game of the year contendant. I do think that they do a lot of cool things with the game, but I don't know if I would call this the game of the year. But let's go ahead and jump into it with the review here. So first of all, things out of the way, I think this is a great addition to God of War as a whole franchise. I think the games have evolved over time in a very weird kind of way, because if you compare these to the original God of War, it's a very different kind of game, not just gameplay wise but story wise. What do with character writing here and everything is very differently approached in like a really good way, because this game does a lot of things differently. I do think they did a lot of cool things based off the God of War from 2018. I think they actually evolved a lot in a lot of ways. The relationship between Kratos and his son is really well built, and it feels very authentic. Like if you have a difficult relationship with your parent, I think this game can even like hit on some notes that do feel very relatable. I think the game does a lot of carrying a different message for each character. It almost feels like the character is divided between Kratos, the original main character, and Atreus, who it basically becomes the main protagonist in the game as the story progresses. You do feel like the Atreus kind of becomes more protagonist as the story grows up, to the point that you actually play as Atreus for kind of half of the game, and then the other half just kind of go back and forth between the two characters and everything. I do feel that they really evolved the combat in a lot of different ways, but at the same time it did feel pretty much the same game. I wanted them to add more weapons variety in this game, because that was a complaint that I saw on the previous game. You had your axe, and you eventually get the Blaze of Chaos and everything, which is kind of cool, callback to original game. But one thing that I always loved about the original God of War games was the fact that you could use multiple weapons. Each weapon added a lot of variety to like the gameplay flow and the gameplay style and everything, and that's really cool. I actually really like that a lot. Unfortunately, in this game, in the previous game, we are very limited to the amount of weapons that you get and the amount of combo variations that you can do. In this game, they added a new weapon, which was kind of cool, and all different shield styles, with different layers of variations for the hand-to-hand combat with the shield and everything, which is very nice. Overall, I feel like the flow of combat is a little bit better. I feel like they could have used a little bit more for Atreus. Like I mentioned before, he becomes a protagonist that you actually play with, and unfortunately his combos are just kind of very boring. He only uses the bow. He does get a sword later on, no spoilers or anything, but he doesn't really use it like a sword or anything like that, so you don't really have like that additional layers or anything. They added the additional feature when you actually get to play with different characters as like a secondary character, replacing Atreus at times. And that's cool. I think that they add some different layer. Unfortunately, for example, one of the characters that they added, she basically just replaces Atreus as the character that you're playing as. So they do the exact same combos with the shooting the bow and arrow, with the exact same magics and everything. So there's not even variations, so that is the exact same way. So the combos don't really feel like they're adding new things or anything like that. It doesn't really feel like the new addition really added new things for that particular character or for the flow of the gameplay. Overall, I do think the gameplay is still very solid. I think that if you like the gameplay from the original game, it is a really good build up from the previous game. I made a comparison on Twitter before that this feels like a baby's first Dark Souls game, and a lot of times it does feel this way because the combo variation can be so stiff at times that it does feel kind of like the way that they do, for example, certain attacks, the enemies, they do it in a big window, which is for you to be able to learn how to parry and things like that. If you're very familiar with Dark Souls games, they do that all the time, where a boss will do a specific type of combo that is meant to be parried and is meant to teach you how to parry. And if you're not like good into parrying or like trying to learn kind of mechanic, you're just gonna have a hard time with it. But if you actually get the time to learn the pairing windows and everything in the game and the characters and everything, the game gets really easy kind of midway to the game and everything, because the combos can become almost like a little repetitive on that end. Not saying that it's bad or anything, because it's great to have variety, especially in a world where there's so many other Dark Souls type of game. I think it's cool to have a game that is as popular as God of War adopt some of the main mechanics that the Dark Souls games do in a much easier way for normal people that don't play Dark Souls games to kind of get involved into it. I think the mechanics work well. I just feel like I wish there was more variation for the combos, especially weapon variations, because not everybody enjoys certain combos or certain ways and everything, and it always feels it's nice to be able to open that up a little bit more. Overall, gameplay of the game is pretty solid. I think that they did not enough for me to say, oh wow, it's a big change or anything, but it's still pretty cool, and I still really enjoy what they added here. Overall, I think God of War is a great game. Story-wise, it's amazing. I think the character writing is pretty on point. All the different characters that you meet on the way are very interesting. They do almost feel like a connection between what is based off of, which is obviously Norse mythology, but at the same time it has like a modern touch to it. Sometimes it hits better than others, and sometimes it hits much worse than others. For example, when you meet a lot of the other Norse gods, Odin particularly, which he feels like oddly like a mafia boss from like the 1920s Italian mafia type of thing, New York. The way that he talks, the way that he expresses himself, a lot of the mannerisms and stuff, he really feels like he's supposed to be like some mob boss or something like that. But he's like a god of Norse mythology and everything, who is supposed to be really a big bad of the game and everything, this cunning character and everything. But the entire time I just feel like he's like some Italian mafia boss mob guy. I don't know, it just felt really odd and bizarre. It felt like it really didn't fit the God of War world, or like even if you're like trying to think of God of War lore as in general and everything, I don't know, something about it just didn't feel right. I don't think it meshed really well with the rest of the characters and everything, but I don't think it really ruined the experience enough for me, at least to say, oh, this really, I hated this and it ruined everything about God of War or whatever. I don't think it did, but I felt like it was worth mentioning because I thought it was really odd. And sometimes it really took me out of it whenever he's like starting certain phrases and everything. I'm like, why is he talking like that? I don't understand. But overall, I think it's fine. I think it's not a big deal, but I feel like worth mentioning and everything. Overall, I want to give this game a 9.5 out of 10. I think it's almost amazing, like almost perfect in some sense, but I do think the combat could use a little more polish on that end. I really wanted a little more of that action-ish type. It felt too scripted at times, but it's like too scripted that it doesn't feel like it's enough of that combat flow that feels like natural enough. On the other hand, the story could use a little bit more of like not so long-winded. I don't know, a lot of characters talk for a really insanely long amount of time, especially NPCs in this game for some reason feel the need to like tell you random shit at times. You're like, why are you saying this? For example, when you're doing puzzles or like when you're even fighting, they're like, oh, you should do this or you should do that, and it's not like they say it one time, they're constantly saying things, and I'm like, why? Like, it's cool when it's like world building and it's just like talking and everything. For example, you're just hanging out and they're telling stories about the past or making references to previous God of War games or whatever. That's really cool. I actually really like that. What I don't like is when you're playing and the game is like, hey, maybe you should use your shield or like things like that, because it can be really like almost like take me out of like, yes, I'm aware I'm playing a game, and yes, I know I'm fucking up my own combos. I don't need the NPCs to mention the fact that I'm fucking up my own combos. It's really frustrating. It really takes me out of the experience that I'm playing a video game at this time. But anyway, just a small frustration there. Anyway, thanks so much for watching this, guys. Like and subscribe, leave me in the comments down below. How do you feel about God of War? Is it the game of the year? You think it's a perfect game? Do you think it does have some issues? that could work out. Are you excited for the future God of War games or something like that? Anyway, thanks so much for watching this, guys. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.